Hello and welcome to Console Shock, episode 54, Retro and Modern Gaming Chat, with me, Trev, and the man who pioneered selling retro video games in Croydon, Stu.
Hi there, Trev, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's been a while, isn't it, since we've done a show?
It has, yeah. We've got to do it more often. You started a new job, so I put it down to you being stressed about your new job.
It's kind of killed our momentum a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I've started a new job, you started a new job, so we've got a few plans for a few new things, so we're sort of talking about beforehand. So fingers crossed, we'll be getting some, doing some new things.
We're not going anywhere, that's for sure.
But I've got a confession to make.
You bought an Atari ST?
No, I wouldn't do that. Don't be silly. I bought a downloadable game.
Oh, what are you doing?
I've done that loads,
actually. I'll be honest, I've done that loads myself. Anyway, go on. What'd you buy?
I got Virtual Racer.
Yeah, I got that as well.
Yeah, on the Switch, and it's so good. It's so good.
It's the best racer on the Switch, not counting Mario Kart.
I wouldn't say it's quite the best.
Yeah,
but it is very good, and it feels right. If that makes sense.
I used to love the Mega Drive version with the special chip inside it, the SVP chip. So it ran like utter dog shit, and but at the time it was like to play a game that was like I grew up by the seaside. So we had a pier near where I lived, and that was had an arcade in it. They had Virtual Racing on a human one, but it's probably like a 20-inch screen. But in those days, that was like amazing. So we had about a year later, so we had to have that on a cartridge that was like £100. Actually, it was very expensive.
But just think, all it's taken is another 25 years, and we've got an arcade-perfect port of it.
Come round pretty quick, isn't it?
I know, exactly.
I really like
all the power of the Switch.
A lot of people slag off the Saturn version of Virtual Racing. It's actually quite good.
No, 32X is better.
Probably, yeah, but I prefer the Saturn. It's got a career mode in it. It's got an actual career mode where you have to start off in a go-kart. Crying out loud.
Really?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you should check it out. It's worthless. It's like you could pick it up for about £3 probably for CEX or something. But yeah, it's actually quite a good game. It's I think it's underrated. But yeah, Virtual Racing is really good. It's £5-6, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
I think it's worth it for that, isn't it? It's 3 tracks, but it's really just what was it all about in those days? You just try and get your fastest time, isn't it? And that can easily last you months on end, can't it? Just doing that on its own.
Yeah, it's just trying to do it. And I did the Grand Prix mode as well, which is 20 laps, which is quite focused on it.
Now, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing one track. Yeah. Well, yeah, it is a great game. So I'd advise anybody with a Switch and is a Sega fan to go and grab Virtual Racing. It's the best version that's ever come out. Better than the arcade, actually. But yeah, awesome. But we do have a guest on today, so we're coming back after a hiatus straight away with a guest. So we're big fans of this podcast, Maximum Power Up, and we're going to welcome Paul from Maximum Power Up. Thanks for joining us tonight.
No worries, gents. Thank you for having me. And it's good to chat to you for the first time. Well, over the air, as to put it, because obviously we just DM'd each other.
After nearly about an hour chatting just before we hit record.
I am a nightmare for that, so I am sorry for wandering off on many different tangents and stuff. But
well, that's why you make a podcast, isn't it? You get to record it. So.
I know. Well, listen, it was just good just to hear what you guys were saying about Virtual Racing. I've heard nothing but good things about that Switch version.
Have you got a Switch?
Yes, I have. So I am tempted to get that game now because I know
it's worth getting. So yeah. I saw it about 3 months ago when it came out on Japan only, and I was, when's it coming out in the UK? When's it coming out? Why is it taking so long? I just couldn't get my head around it. But
yeah, about 3 months.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Just to, I don't know, put a bit of English text on there. I don't know. But
it's a racing game as well, so you don't need too much, do you? Really?
Exactly.
But no, the sort of the versions of the Mega Drive games now, and stuff that are coming out on Switch, the Sega classics. I know that they are meant to be brilliant. It's it seems to be we're in a good run with access to these classics on modern hardware.
I think it's the guys that M2. I think are the guys
M2,
that
yeah.
Sega games. I'm hoping we'll get a Virtua Fighter, like maybe Virtua Fighter 1 or 2. I think that's inevitable if they could do Virtua Racing. But they're the guys that are behind the emulation on the Mega Drive Mini that's going to be coming out in a couple of months.
Didn't they do the Castlevania collection and the Contra collection as well?
I think they did, yeah. Have you bought? Have you guys bought those at all?
I've not. I've got too much to play at the moment, so I've slowed down.
Backlog of shame.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. It's a mountain of shame.
I know.
You know, I'm just playing Spider-Man on PS4. I've almost done it though now.
Oh wow, you've done well there. I just keep going back to the same old crap. It's just, you know what it is. It's like you come home from work and you're like, oh, I could start one of the umpteen new games. Oh, I just got Super Mario Maker 2. And it said
excellent. Oh, Trevor, you'll never play that.
I've got one. I had one on the Wii U, and that was also awesome.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to get 2 then. It's probably got a story mode in it, but just haven't even got around to putting the bloody cartridge in yet. And Mortal Kombat 11. Obviously, I love Mortal Kombat, but I'll be like, oh, I could play 11, or I could just play fire up my Mega Drive and play Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. I just end up playing Mortal Kombat 3. So yeah, I need to sort of get out of that mindset and try and get going with some real games. But yeah,
it's difficult though. I mean, like everyone knows, I'm always playing Football Manager, and now I'm trying not to be going on the old Champ Manager 97, 98 and the 01, 02. You know, I'm speaking to the wrong people on Twitter. You know, they're just they're too tempting. Really, really are. But we all know how well. I've seen that you guys are football fans, so you know how horribly addictive that game gets. And as soon as you get into Champ Manager or Football Manager, that's it. Nothing else.
Paul, I've got a question related to football for you.
Okay.
Is your podcast named after the Sunderland footballer?
It's no. Oh, Max Power, I know. And also being up in Wigan as well, where he, used to be as well. It could have worked, but no. I honestly to God, like when I found out that he was playing for Wigan, I thought, is this just a bit of a piss take name? You know, because I was thinking of Homer. Yeah, Homer in The Simpsons.
Yeah. He changed his name, didn't he?
Yes.
Or on like a hairdryer or something. Yeah. That's a stunning name. But Paul,
yes.
So obviously you've got your podcast, Maximum Power Up. So
yes.
I've stumbled across your podcast by being part of Retro Collect, like the forum that's there. Because it's quite having a sort of a UK-based sort of forum of sort of video game collectors. There's like Nintendo Age and all that stuff. If you just like talking about NES collecting and you're American, although I like to collect NES games, but we're a bit more diverse, perhaps in that sense here. But how did you start a podcast on there? Was that were you a member of that website? Did you come from elsewhere? How did you get going with Maximum Power Up?
Well, going back about 4.5 years now. We started in March 2014, March 2015. Yeah. Because myself and Phil, co-founder, we were both part of Retro Asylum, another podcast that just focuses on retro, and we wanted to branch out and cover modern gaming as well as retro, and that's how obviously the podcast came about. And then after it was probably about a dozen episodes, Adam Buchanan, who used to run Retro Collect, he linked up with us type thing, because the Retro Collect podcast had wound down at the time. There are rumours that something might come back, but I'm not 100% on that. It's just what you hear on the grapevine, known as Twitter. But yeah, so we obviously, find ourselves at some of the same game shows alongside Retro Collect, like over at your Play Manchester, Blackpool and stuff like that. So yeah, there's been a bit of a crossover as well, because we've had Tom Charnock from Dreamcast Junkyard on as a host and part of a team. Jake Smith, who was with Retro Collect as well. Yeah. Chris Smith, the original Chris Smith, from again Retro Collect, and then we added another Chris Smith, K June, and also Amy and Aaron. So there's been about 7 of us on the team that I've built up, and it's been a mixture of content, that we've put out and things like that. Like you guys mentioned, sometimes time does make it quite difficult.
Yes.
It's either work and things like that. So, it's putting out stuff, when we can at the moment. But I feel like we've put out a good diverse type of topics, going from things like the magazine interviews that I've done a lot of, and that's basically what I think has been something that's made the show stand out a bit more, because no one else has really done that. But also we've had the chance to discuss some 8-bit games, so like for Commodore 64 we've discussed, but then on the next episode you might be talking about the PS2, the next one we'd be talking about some like the Resident Evil series we've discussed. So you're going from like the PS1 all the way up to now.
Well, they're getting retro now, aren't they? I mean, one thing that actually struck me that was amazing was I was at my sort of local WH Smith, and I saw the latest issue of Retro Gamer, and they're doing a feature on Burnout. And I'm like, wow, when that magazine started, that was like a game that was just coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy, yeah,
exactly. I mean, we've had Darren on the show, editor of Retro Gamer, a couple of times, and he says like one of the things that he's sometimes gets a bit of stick for is some readers go, "Oh God, this isn't retro," and I'm not reading this because it's like it's not covering, say, the Amstrad this month. And then, but then Burnout now is 17, 18 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a PS2 game, original Xbox game. So those are retro consoles now.
Yeah, I would always say like if you're 2 generations removed.
Yes.
I'll
exactly.
get that to be retro.
Yeah.
Retro makes it sound like you think of like 80s when you hear the word retro. I think it's more like just classic, or maybe is a more easier term to kind of deal with that. Because by that sort of rule, that means when we're about to hit, the next generation of consoles next year, I think, isn't it, with Scarlet coming out and the PS5. So that means like PS3 and 360 are basically like on the verge of becoming retro.
Which sounds crazy, because
it does sound crazy to me. I've always, I think we've all been terrible for calling, the Xbox 360, the PS2.
Yeah, I mean,
that's retro. It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, and I still play, like Stu, we've talked about this before, that we still kind of play Xbox 360 games from like 2012, 13, 14. Okay, some of that's a crossover with like the last gen of consoles, but or the current gen of consoles, but they still look really good. They haven't really aged at all, especially the games that aren't trying to portray real people. They look awesome.
Well, with 360, think about it. When the 360 came out, this was end of 2005. So it come up to 14 years ago. Because I remember playing things like Perfect Dark Zero, and The Condemned, and you're thinking, I know it's not retro yet, but it's when gaming changed a lot, really, because you went from you see it just by going from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3, in regards to the size of the games, and how you've obviously got to download everything. And some of these games are like 25 gig on PS3, and now you look at them and be like, knocking on 400 gigs, some of them, which is absolutely mental. And you think it's only like the next generation up, but it was such a massive jump. I mean, I don't think you can really get games to look better. I mean, how good do they need to look nowadays? And I think this is one reason why you've had that sort of retro boom in the last few years. When you play games like, one that I've got on my Switch, Dead Cells, which is a great, like 2D action type platformer. And a bit roguelike, because obviously it changes the level design every single time you die. But, like more people go for things like that. This month on PlayStation Plus, you've got Horizon Chase, which is an absolutely fantastic old school. Love it. I'd much rather play games like that. I know I just mentioned Spider-Man, which I've really enjoyed. But some games, I don't know. I know I've just said that I could spend hours on Football Manager, but I think I'd struggle to play
don't you? Yeah.
Skyrim now or something like that.
You just want to dive in. You don't want to watch an hour of cutscenes.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid. You want to quickly jump in. And it's like with the Xbox 360, it's recently I think we talked on the podcast about how obviously there's all the Xbox Live Arcade games. Some of them never go over to the Xbox One, or some of them have made backwards compatible, but like Sensible Soccer and things like that. But there's things like Virtua Fighter 2. Which they haven't. I don't think they've actually made that backwards compatible. I think they made Daytona backwards compatible, but there's loads of those games. There's a Rainbow Islands sort of remake on the 360, and I mean, you kind of hope your hard drive doesn't die and Xbox Live doesn't go down. But some of those games are awesome and still great today. And it's probably the last generation of consoles where if you've got a disc, it's probably still going to run okay, the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I look at my PS2 collection, and I've got like a few retro compilations, like the Capcom ones, Taito, and Midway Classics and stuff like that. And thinking these are brilliant, and you can still pick them up relatively cheap, and like you say, you've got to hope that your hard drive doesn't pack in, because every time you're downloading games off, Xbox Store or anything like that, you just got to hope to God that it stays on there, really. Yeah,
you're kind of at the mercy of like Microsoft really being happy to. I've always wondered when are they going to shut down the 360 servers, but in saying that, they've got so many like backwards compatible Xbox 360 games on the Xbox One that I assume will carry over to the Scarlet when it launches. Probably have to keep some kind of a small scale operation running to be able to play those games online, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if that makes sense, I suppose it gives them that other lease of life. So it's good that they actually are paying, not tribute is to put it, but basically still remembering that, their own history and some of the big hitters, that they still want you to go, well, it's sort of like, I can't believe I'm using this term, but like semi-retro in a way, not quite there, but well, previous generation, isn't it? So, and also it's sort of like, it seems to be games where there's more recent versions in the series of that game, so people can go, oh right, I want to go back and play this, and see how things started out.
It's going to be interesting how things sort of pan out. But one thing that I've noticed that especially on like your Facebook page, on Maximum Power Facebook page, you really are into and it's something that I've treaded water with but haven't really dived in completely, and that's collecting video game magazines.
Yes, a lot. Too much at times.
So I've obviously I used to love video game magazines back in the day. It was kind of a window into it was the internet really for video game
definitely.
Magazines. And so I had tons of them. I had a big I think my parents chucked out at some that classic like age-old story that we all probably through. I had loads of issues of Total, of GamesMaster, of Amiga Format. All of them got like thrown out, which is obviously horrible. But I've built up a modest collection. I mean, my best couple of things I could probably say about it is I've got a big collection of the official PlayStation magazine, going back to the first issue. Which actually started a few months after the PlayStation came out, which is kind of weird. But I've got that, and I've got about the first 100 issues of that.
Yeah, God, that's all right.
Yeah, so
they're really, really good, those early issues. So we're talking about the original PlayStation.
Yeah, the original PS1.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely fantastic magazine with Steve Jarrett was launch editor.
That's right.
And honestly, that man's just a legend in magazines. He's launched so many great titles: Total, Edge, Commodore Format. The list goes on.
Didn't you? I think you had him on Maximum.
Yes. Yeah, it was the first magazine related guest that we had back in 2016, I think it was.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, he was absolutely fantastic to speak to. I just wish in a way I'd done it a little bit later, just so my skills had got a little bit better, because I was just so nervous.
Over it.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I did that one alongside Tom from It was obviously he was part of it. He's dipped in and out of podcasts, Tom, because he spent so much time doing his Dreamcast junkyard. But then we put Steve Jarrett through the Maximum Power Up magazine quiz, where it was coming up with 10 magazines, whether or not they're real titles or not. And some of the ones that Tom found were just absolutely hilarious. And he's like, real, fake, and it was like, okay, the one and only time we've ever done that, but it just sticks in my memory. But I felt like getting Steve on sort of helped get other people involved as well, over the following years.
Yeah, it's kind of a gateway almost, isn't it? It's funny because
definitely.
What I would love to chat to him about Steve Jarrett, also loads of his mags, like Edge is probably probably the one that's still going. Probably it might be the only one that's still going that it was on. But Commodore Format, I mean, that started in like 1990 when the Commodore 64 was already like 8 years old. But still, the Amiga had been well established at that point. Its successor, effectively. It's almost like someone launching a Wii U magazine now or something. But that's probably not a good analogy because the Commodore 64 was still selling and the games were still being made alongside the Amiga. And that magazine didn't finish until is it 95 or
about 95. It had a good few years. We had on, I can't think of his surname. It's that's real bad of me. For who works on, if you follow Commodore Format on Twitter, the guy Neil behind it, he put so much effort into it. We had him on the show for our Commodore 64 episode, slap bang in the middle of the show, and it's a cheap plug. And then he was saying, again, like you, he only got a C64 a little bit later. Oh, no, we were talking about people who got C64 a bit later on, like yourself. Because there was still some big games coming out. And that first, say, year or so of the magazine, some months, you were just getting hit after hit, and for the first couple of years, really, before it really started to die off. Like anything, when I suppose I've still got to come to this, but my son is only 2.5. But where it's a case of right, we're going to get you a starter computer or starter console. So, for example, something like the generation before, and at the time, obviously, the Commodore 64 wouldn't have been megabucks, but they had a big software library. There were still games coming out for it. There were still magazines for it as well, and it was sort of like a perfect machine to pick up for people, and to get another couple of years of life out of it, and 5 years of a magazine is absolutely crazy because that outlasted so many other magazines, and it was still on the news shelves. Exactly. That magazine was going alongside but alongside official PlayStation magazine.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, and it's because obviously the Amiga was the cheapest Amiga was still when most of 1990 it was still about £400. So you probably
about 300 to 400. Yeah, definitely.
You could double that in today's money, whereas a Commodore 64, I think it was £150 at most.
Yeah, so you just it was like a no-brainer. If someone says, I want to have a computer, or the other thing is sometimes computers get passed down from older brothers and sisters. So that market was already installed. And I think when you talk about magazines, it is one of those that does jump out, that Commodore Format, because, it was quite brave of Future Publishing as well to go, okay, let's launch an 8-bit magazine. Because around that time, as said on the show, Future had a lot of money invested by selling Ace magazine. And obviously they redid the offices and they really branched out and launched a lot of new magazines, for a hell of a lot of machines.
Yeah, I mean, there was Sega. I mean, there was one that I remember picking up and thinking, what the hell? That was Sega Master Force. I'm not sure that was them, but it's one of these sort of oddball ones that I remember.
Only lasted about 6 issues done by Europress.
Yeah, that's right. It was all right. Yeah. Actually, I remember reading it and quite enjoying it. It was interesting to have an 8-bit Sega magazine. This is 93.
It just didn't go that far because the publisher went under, and they also did a Nintendo version as well, because you had SNES Force, and I think it just stuck with the name N-Force for the NES. But you just don't see those very often. It was just that you know, they were really trying to corner the market as well. And also in that Sega Master Force, you had a little bit of a middle section with some Game Gear stuff in as well. You know, because around the same time you had
it's called, yeah.
It's what, sorry?
G-Force.
Yeah, that was it. Yes.
Supplement thing, yeah.
Yeah.
They were fond of that, weren't they? Remember cv&g had like Go for a little while. I remember I was in awe of the PC Engine GT in there.
Yeah.
Because obviously that was the Rolls Royce of handhelds at that point.
Oh god, yeah. Never played on one though. I still never have done. Not even at games events.
Really?
No.
I've got the American version now. It was sort of an ambition of mine to get one when I was able to have the money. They haven't got any cheaper, unfortunately. But yeah, I've got the American version, the Turbo Express, and they're really cool machines. I probably like the screens are amazing still. Get yourself a Turbo EverDrive, so you've got all the games on one cart, and you're away. They're absolutely amazing machines. Just want someone to work out how to get the CD games to work on it. Someone's managed to do that for the Mega Drive now with the Mega SD that's just been announced, which is amazing. Actually, I'm wondering what your thoughts would be on that. Are you interested in getting a Mega SD to play your CD games on your Mega Drive?
I'm not too bothered, to be fair. I used to have like a Mega CD years ago, and I never ever played it when I had it. I'm going back to this time collecting, and I just like, nah, because the only thing like Final Fight CD I played, and that was about it. You know, I remember picking up things like Snatcher cheap. This is back in about 2003. That was in Cash Generator in Bury, and it cost me a few quid. That's all. But I know. You look at it now. I've got so many sad regrets and stuff like that. But let's try and keep it light.
That's bad enough already.
God, I know. I mean, do you guys like this? New machine then, or?
Well, I've got a Mega CD, and I'm quite happy to. I mean, you can just burn discs because it's obviously there was no region locking or copy protection in those days on CD consoles, those early '90s ones. So I just burn discs. I think I've burned basically all the games that I wanted, and I've got some a bunch of real Mega CD games. Well, I don't tend to use the original copy, so I just burn. I'll burn a copy and use that. I quite enjoy it. There's a lot of games I like on the Mega CD. We did an episode recently on it. Things like the Terminator, Sonic CD, of course, Final Fight, as you mentioned, Snatcher. Even some of the FMV games are quite fun, although they're kind of cheesy. Obviously, Night Trap. And you got Batman Returns and things that are genuinely different versions from like the Mega Drive version. So Eternal Champions, I quite like Mortal Kombat CD.
That's all right.
Yeah, because you got the arcade music in it, which always sounds cool. It's in the wrong order, which annoys a lot of people, but I think it's all right. You got all those awesome games, and it's got a decent library, about 200 games. You're adding on to what the Mega Drive already had. America got a few more than we got in the end, but I'm not sure I'd want to. It's quite expensive, and weirdly, I like the look of I've got the Mega Drive one and the Mega CD one. I love that look. It looks like it's just so cool. I'm not sure I'd want to just go back to just having this weird oversized cartridge on just a plain like Mega Drive 1. Even though it's very convenient, you can just stick all the discs, the ISO files onto an SD card and run them off that. I don't really... I'm quite happy. I guess I'll just keep using my Mega CD until it fails, because I was just going to eventually. And that's when this thing will come in very handy. But yeah, I'm not going to run out to get one. Obviously, the price is quite prohibitive. Stu, what about you?
I'm not too excited about it, really. I just think it's. I think we've talked about this in the past. The Mega CDs. It's like what Paul said. I think I can name on one hand the games I want to get on it, and I've got Final Fight, and I want to get Sonic CD. I don't know. I like to get Snatcher because everyone talks about it, but it's not really a game. I'm dying to play or anything like that.
Yeah, if you're collecting, I mean, you got no chance of you really getting Snatcher for a decent price. Another game I really like on the Mega CD is Lords of Thunder, which is a Hudson.
It's an RPG, isn't it?
No, it's a shmup.
No.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of more famous on the PC Engine, but there's a Mega CD version. It's actually really good. But that's like the PAL version of that is like.
What's that other one?
There's all the Working Designs games. You might be thinking.
Keiko's Adventure.
Flying Squadron.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that I wouldn't mind playing that because I hear good things about that game. But all the FMV games, I'm not particularly
No.
into the QuickTime event, Road Avenger and things like that.
If it's KO for Flying Squadron, you just got to get that demo disc that was on a magazine that has the full game on it. Accidentally.
Oh yeah,
God,
yeah. You put a code in or something, didn't you?
You put the level selected, and it turns out all the levels are in the game. They just kind of just stopped. They just had the game stop after the first one, but you could just go to the title screen. Yeah, is it Sega Pro that I think?
Possibly. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, there was a CD only version of that magazine.
Yes, it'll be Sega Pro then. I think it must have been.
Yeah. Got to go back to magazines again. So, what is a particular sort of magazine that you particularly focus on in terms of collecting, and have you actually managed to collect all of it?
Yeah, obviously, if anyone listens to the show, they know that Super Plays, hands down, my favourite magazine.
Yeah.
Luckily, I bought my collection of, because I used to buy it when I was a kid, but then, like we said before, like you, all my magazines went back in about 98, 99. We're talking hundreds. And then it was when I was collecting again, early noughties, before getting rid of everything in 2006. I'd been over to Burnley and bought this full set of Super Play for 30 odd quid.
Oh my God,
and went collecting it. I know. Basically, but again, this is like 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
So again, like whacking them into a rucksack, going back on the train back over to Bolton where I lived at the time. So I'd be like, right,
that's quite heavy.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, but in 2012, I'd been up to my mum's. I was ready to selling them, but then a few months later, I just started collecting again because I started reading through them again. I was like, you know what? I've got the itch again to really start collecting these. And I've just finished a full collection of Total magazine, thanks to Mark over at Sega Mags. Anyone who knows Mark over at Sega Mags, a great guy. Sometimes does things like video game markets, and he's always on the lookout for buying collections off people. So he's helped me out with so many magazines. He's helped me complete my full set of Mean Machine Sega as well. And what else? Nintendo magazine system. Yeah. There's a few. It's just a great magazine,
I
There's
bought
still
the first
more one
issue of Mean Machines Sega because I think you got a big a stencil to do a Street Fighter
tattoo.
Yeah, that's they've done that. They've done a Sonic one. They've done the videos. They've done. I remember this was on, I think, issue 7. I think it had Jungle Strike on the cover. It had like a little metal tin to put like I don't know what, like Sega CD games in it or something like that. You got
really good stuff with it, didn't you? I think Mortal Kombat got like stickers and like cards. It was really.
Do you remember those Super Play cards or Super Play Sega cards? Because you got a pack of those with one of them. And that's one thing that I regret selling off when I was a kid, because I'd love to have a full set of those again, because they were showing some key Mega Drive games and having like little cheats on the back. It was almost like a portable magazine in a way, because, you had tips and cheats in your pocket with like little mini reviews. And I think it was about 120 cards to collect. But I'm going back to being in year 8 at school, so I must have been about 13, something like that.
Yeah, I remember like Nintendo magazine system. I think I got the first issue of that and Total. I think when they come out, I'd get the odd issue of various magazines. There was very few that I think cv&g I made a point of getting every month for a couple of years. The PlayStation magazine, got that for a couple of years. I got the first issue of GamesMaster.
That was brilliant. That first issue.
Yeah, the artwork in it was just beautiful. It was better than the TV show.
Outlasted it.
Yeah, oh God, yeah, damn right. You know, it's I think back then there used to be so many magazines to choose from. They had to try and do something to get you to part with your money, be that cover discs, free gifts, cover exclusive. You know, sometimes, like you just said, you'd go towards a certain title, be it CVG, Total, Superplay, you know, and there'd be reasons why you'd want that magazine, you know, whether or not it's certain writers inside, you know,
the look of
and you'd be
it,
like,
you know, all that,
yeah. I mean, Stuart, what were some of your favourite magazines?
I think my favourite really was Mean Machines.
Yeah.
And I remember getting the really early issues, and it was
multi-format then.
Yeah, exactly. It was a multi-format between its split to Nintendo Magazine System, I think, and obviously Mean Machine Sega. But it was really, I felt like I was, how do you put it? I had this sort of insight into the rest of the world of gaming, because I wouldn't know. I'd go and buy this magazine, and I was maybe sort of 7 or 8 at school, and I would, oh yeah, well, there's a new. You know, I remember guessing, I think the first issue I bought had Super Mario 4 on it. It had a review of Super Mario 4, which also became obviously Super Mario World over here. And it was, there's a 4th one coming out, but we'd only just seen the 3rd one. So everyone was like, no, I don't believe you. And it was such a big deal having it, because you'd get so much information from just like almost months or years before a game actually came out. And I remember having early issues of that, and on the front cover, obviously it had the consoles that it covered, and like the first 4 or 5 issues had the PC Engine, or I think the GX4000 as well. And I would always look at those and, what's the PC Engine? Oh man. And they'd always sort of, you know, you'd read the letters in there, and there was always a kid going, I've imported a PC Engine from Japan. It costs £500. What are the best games you'd get? And of course, I didn't know. I didn't have that kind of money. Who are these people? So I think that was my favourite. And I've always talked about Amiga Format and Amiga Power, because I love the cover discs, and you got those, and there's always, you know, sensible soccer, but with apples and oranges, and it just really great cover discs. And you got to know who's it. I want to say Jazz Rignall.
Oh yeah, he was in tons of
from Mean Machines, and
and he had a big old mullet.
Yeah,
that's cool. I want to have a mullet just like him.
It was like there was that like Mean Machines. Then I think it kind of evolved into Sega magazine.
Well, when Mean Machine Sega ended after 53 issues, it went on to because it was done by EMAP, and Sega Saturn magazine was going, and it sort of just like got absorbed into that. And then like EMAP by, if anyone's interested on how EMAP faded away, and if you listen to our Steve Merritt episode that I did, because he was in charge of a lot of the magazines towards the end, including the very, very, very short-lived Mean Machines PlayStation that only had 6 issues, 7 if you include
I never knew about that.
Yeah, I've got Mean Machines, but
I've got a few issues. Because I've got like issue 0 upstairs as well, but it's just stupidly hard to find. You know, there are some listed on eBay, but like we're talking about 15 to 20 quid an issue. You know,
it's quite hard to read now. I've got one issue. It's got a review of Mortal Kombat Trilogy. It's got a picture of Goro on the front.
It's just
and like the tone is like, it's really like teenage, like. You know, like a lot of like sort of cringy kind of jokes. Obviously, when I was a kid, I was like, "Oh, this is cool. They understand us." You know, but reading it back, it's got lots of '90s catchphrase, like, you know, and stuff. It's kind of hard to read now.
It was funny. Bad. It was really, really bad. I mean, it was just Mean Machines in name only. But then, like, obviously, EMAP, when they got out of like Games Mags and stuff, because they never got the official license for, say, the Dreamcast magazine, that went to Dennis Publishing.
Yeah.
So that was like a bit of a blow. And these are some of the things like we cover, because this is why I started doing these interviews with people that work on them, because I like hearing the behind the scenes stories, you know, about what was going on, how the industry was back then. Because you know what, like you just said then, Stuart, some of the news that you'd read in the magazines, you're like going, God, this is ages off. But they just give you those little snippets. Like I was sat outside like the other night, just there reading an issue of Total from 1994, and it was going, coming soon, Nintendo's next console. And it meant the Virtual Boy. And it's like going, oh, this is going to be brilliant, and it's going to be, great virtual, reality type graphics and things, and it's going to be portable. And obviously now, looking back, you go, ugh, but
didn't work out.
it was exciting times, and like even when I see it now at things like events, I know some people have done homebrew games to it and stuff, but you sort of just chuckle because you go, it just did nothing,
It's not great.
Yeah, things like the Jaguar, things like the CDI, the 3DO, there were exciting times to be there. And like when you read stuff like Edge magazine, that were massive, massive champions of things like 3DO, it's sort of like an alternative take of history in a way. I mean, it gives you that insight of what was going on at the time. But now, obviously, you look back, modern day, you look back, and it's just like, how did they even think like that? How were they expecting this to, be their champion when we all know how it panned out? But then, you have a look at Sony with the PlayStation, and they just did everything right. And one of the best interviews that I've done was with a guy called Jeff Glendenning, and he did PR for Sony. And we had a good chat, and he was like going, right, we're marketing it to the club scene. We're marketing it like this. It's edgy. It's grown up. And you know what? It worked, because obviously we know that PlayStation was here to stay, and all the other CD-based consoles went away. Obviously, the Saturn still had its fans, but I would say you spoke to a lot of Saturn fans back then, and they'd go, oh, I do like the PlayStation. And I think looking back, though, now at the Saturn, you can see its strong points, because it's not like quite as I don't know, like in your face, where it's like you can either have the Saturn or the PlayStation, like it was like when we were kids. Because now, as adults, we can go, well, do you know what? I've got the PlayStation, I've got the Saturn, and the Saturn's brilliant for your shoot 'em ups. Your Saturn's brilliant for your 2D stuff, platformers and whatever. But the PlayStation's also got some big hitters, and I say it does 3D well, but some of those games look absolutely awful now.
They just lost their edge. I mean, I'm a massive Sega. The Sega are my favorite video game, like anything, by far. But even despite that, I'd easily say the PlayStation 1 is in my top 3 consoles of all time. It might even threaten number 1. Like they lost their edge a bit. Like those midnight, those like 92, 93 period with the Sega Pirate TV ads and the Cyber Razor cut were just really cool. And like Nintendo were kind of, they told along with their Rick Mail stuff, but as charming as those adverts were, they just were nowhere near as cool as like the Sega ones. They just looked awesome, and they literally took the piss out of Nintendo, often directly, and they just looked edgy and awesome, but they didn't really follow up on that. Sony kind of did the natural evolution of that, whereas Sega just kind of, I don't know, they kind of just made the Saturn look cool and futuristic without really, we were quite abstract adverts, and maybe just showing the game, really. They didn't really do kind of a cool, kind of give it a cool vibe, whereas Sony did that. And it just, that's what happened. But like when you go to that 92, 93 era, when we go out of these magazines that were telling us about 3DO, CDI, Jaguar, and the PlayStation, I actually wouldn't have predicted that the PlayStation was the one that was going to win.
No, 100%. It was. Yeah. It seemed to be about the 3DO.
I thought it'd be the Saturn and whatever Nintendo brought out.
Well, exactly. That was the way it was. But actually, Paul, I've got a question for you. Have you got any examples of where gaming magazines have said something completely outrageous and said, "Oh, we've just seen a development copy of a game, and that game never came out, or there was no intention of this game ever coming out on System X"?
Well, you see, I can't think of that much off the top of my head. The early ones that I remember, like back then, you always used to get, things like the April Fool's jokes in magazines. Now, I remember the amount of times they'd talk about Street Fighter 2 coming out on the original Game Boy. And granted, eventually it did, because anyone who obviously had Super Nintendo had Street Fighter 2, or, they had one fighting game anyway, because obviously that genre was massive back then. And Street Fighter 2, when it started coming out on every single system, like the Amiga and stuff, you started seeing, well, it could be possible. But then you see some games they previewed and they just fall through, totally. Stuff like, oh God, there's a website called Games That Weren't. I don't know if you've ever followed that, and that's always good to look at. But things like one of my favourite games on the ST is a game called Harlequin, done by Gremlin Games, and that was going to be reskinned as the Madness, as well, a game based on the band Madness. I think it was called like One Step Beyond, and that was going to be coming out on a Mega Drive, and something like that really, really, really interested me, but in regards to some game coming out that never ever did, it was going to be the best thing ever, I can't think off the top of my head. I mean, the only other thing I can think of examples of, when you get certain magazines, I know it always gets mentioned, but like Rise of Robots, I had an Amiga at the time, but so many magazines were loving it, and it just come down to it and just go, well, look, this game isn't very good, and it's hard to decide, what the real deal is, because sometimes you can only go off like the pictures you've seen, and you trust these people. And this is one of the points I made right at the beginning. You get to know your favourite writers. So you mentioned Jazz Rignall, Paul Davis from CVG, like in the late 90s, Steve Jarrett, Andy Dyer, Dave Perry, all these were really, really big names, and they knew what they were on about, because I feel like they put their reputation on the line as well to go, you know what, this game isn't good, do not waste your money on it, because some of these, and this is what's really surprised me, how young some of the writers were. I recently spoke to, I've still got to edit this one, but when I spoke to Cam Winstanley from Amiga Power, he was saying he was only a kid when he started, and you look at it as a reviewer and you think, well, this Amiga game is going to cost 30 quid. Or this Mega Drive game was going to cost like 50 quid or whatever. And you got to go, well, I've got to be quite honest, because if you keep just going, oh, this game's really good, whatever, just, phoning it in, then no one's going to listen to you at all. And you then get those letters in some magazines. I mean, it made me laugh because we go, I read your review of Sonic 3. Why did you only give it 94% when it deserves 95? And you're like, really? It just sometimes just something absolutely ridiculous.
Trev wrote that letter in.
Well, but for one thing, and I've said it on our show, and it's really like cringeworthy now when I think back, because I've always been into the games mags, as said, and I used to buy Sega magazines, even though at the time I didn't own a Sega machine. The odd PC magazine, if there was something in it that I wanted to read. Loads of Nintendo mags. And like being a SNES owner, you had Super Pro, SNES Force, Super Play Total, Super Action, Super Control, and then you have things like GamesMaster and whatever. So there's tons for your machine. And I used to have like a little notebook where I'd write down which each magazine has given the game, the score, and then work out the average. So when I'd be going around the game shops, I'd be there getting out this little notebook just to go, right, well,
what's good?
Cool Spot's got 87% on average, whereas something like, oh God, I'm just trying to think, robots,
You should have
like
started a
about
website
20.
doing that.
It's what?
You should have started a website doing that.
I know. I mean, like I say, this is like so primitive. I wish I still had that little notebook, but sadly that went years ago. But it was great for when you'd just be going around, second-hand game shops and stuff like that and seeing what we gave them, because you don't have like all these magazines with you, unless you've just been collecting a load of Super Plays from Burnley,
Apparently that's where to get them, yeah. It's funny because when you talk about like the different like scores that magazines would give something, I remember like that first issue of GamesMaster, they did a Sonic 2 review and they only gave it like 60%, and they had to do like a big like disclaimer. Why have you only given like literally like calling themselves out, saying why have you only give Sonic 63%? And I think it's samey and it isn't doing anything new. But there was like the second opinion review, because often these magazines would have a second opinion. The other dude, like I don't know who it was, really thought it was great and doesn't know what the main reviewer was talking about.
So what score did they give it? I missed it.
It got 68%.
There we go. Yeah.
68. Now we had. I'm sorry that was so many cheap plugs for our show here, but we had. This was a couple of years ago. I had a sit-down chat with quite a few people from issue 1 of GamesMaster. So we had Les Ellis on, Andy Lowe, Jim Douglas, who was editor, and I think it was actually Aid Price as well, who then went on working in America. He's still in America as well now. Anyway, so we were talking about putting that first issue together, and obviously we talked about Sonic 2 review, because if you speak to Mark from Sega Mags, GamesMaster had a Sonic special only a few years ago, and they were trying to pass it off saying, "Oh, it wasn't a review that we did; it was just a preview." And loads of people just went, "Well, that's bollocks! It was a review."
Yeah.
So anyway, so I asked them about it. I said, "So okay, give it 68%. Why?" And like you say, one reviewer was slightly kinder on it, but everyone said, "Oh yeah, it's dead easy." Now I can't recall off the top of my head if he started saying it was more of a challenge if you want to get all the Chaos Emeralds and everything like that, and turn into a Supersonic. But they just weren't that bowled over by it. I've also spoke to Dean Mortlock, who worked over on Sega Power. And again, he's the same. He goes, no, I think Sonic games are all right, but he prefers the Mario games because there's more substance over them. So when they say with Sonic 2, or it's just more of the same, I mean, personally, I prefer Sonic 2 myself because I feel like it just looks a little bit nicer. There's a little bit more to it. But I suppose with that first Sonic, when that came out, anyone who played that as a kid, and I'm sure we'll all be in the same boat, you just go, wow, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
But yeah, they still stand by it. All these years on, they just go, well, maybe, I don't even think they said they were being a little harsh. They just go, this is what we stood by, end of the day, it's 50 quid. And, you can get through it quite quickly, if you just want to whiz through it. But I don't think they did it to be controversial, really, although it has gone down that way. I mean, this is a magazine that went on for, from 1992 when it launched, all the way up to only last year when it ended.
Last year, wow.
Yeah, it had really good run. But yeah, so I managed to get the last editor on the show as well. So that's something that we discussed a little bit. The history of a magazine growing up and stuff, and it'll have had its other moments. GamesMaster was a magazine that I read religiously up until, say, about PS1 era, first 50 or so issues, and then just dipped into every so often. But, it's someone's opinion at the end of the day. But the writing team that magazine had, those early Games Masters, they had access to so many people that worked at Future Publishing. Steve Jarrett was, guest reviewer. Neil West, again from Mega, I think he was on at the time.
They appeared on the show as well, didn't didn't they, with the reviews and like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like you saw the reviewers on the TV show, and these were big names as well. Jason Brooks, again, I had him on the show a couple of times. He went from Superplay, again, a kid starting out. So he went from Superplay, being a bit of more of a technical expert, and then he went over to Edge magazine with Steve Jarrett. And then when Steve left, he went on to edit Edge for 50 issues, up to the Dreamcast coming out almost. Well, excuse me, the Dreamcast news breaking. So he covered quite a lot in his 60 issues of Edge, going from those days of the CDI and 3DO, going on to the Dreamcast on the horizon.
Wow, yeah.
5 years.
Yeah,
But,
it's funny, like, I think that first issue of GamesMaster, I think the main sort of thrust of the issue, I think it might have been Desert Strike or something.
It was. Yeah, on the cover.
When everything else on that month, I mean, when you think about Sonic, just to sort of any kids listening, to give you the impact of like Sonic 2, people queued up overnight for this game to come out in front of Dixon's and all that, the Game Zone in Comet or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, now kids just think, oh, Sonic's that character that's in that Sega racing game thing. No, like, people would queue up overnight to get this frigging game. Everyone was like gagging for it, and they just ran like, well, Desert Strike is a very good game.
Oh yeah.
Main sort of thrust of that issue. But it's funny when you mention like all the names. I think the only one that I think to me seems to still be in that realm of video game journalism to a point where you kind of will stumble across him fairly easily. It's probably Richard Lee better, because obviously he's still Eurogamer, and I love his Digital Foundry stuff. We had John Linneman on a year or two ago. He gets to hang out with that guy all the time, John. Well, Rich gets to hang out with John, which is kind of cool as well. We like both of them, but yeah, I mean, he's seen some things in his time. I mean, obviously, Mean Machines, he had a really good run on Saturn magazine.
Maximum as well.
Maximum,
he's on my wish list, and we've spoke, and it's just down to scheduling. Hopefully one day. I still have my wish list of guests, and he's definitely on it.
Do you remember? Sorry, Trev.
I was just going to say, like, I'd be tempted for us to like try and get him on the show, because we already had John on.
Yeah.
Locally say, hey, John's been on. He'll be like, oh, cool, you're not weirdos. But yeah, I mean, some of his stuff. I mean, obviously now he focuses on like PC, like analyzing PC games and ports and comparing them. Digital Foundry, of course, is his actual, which was a separate thing before Eurogamer kind of brought them in. But yeah, that's my favorite bit of Eurogamer is Digital Foundry. And Rich has that amazing legacy and Maximum. Yeah, that was, I mean, only ran for like 7 issues. I think like 3 of them at one point before the great video game magazine destruction.
I've got a few of them, but I think that's just it. I think the people that I've interviewed, people like Dave Upchurch as well, are the ones that have come from the magazine industry. So again, like you just mentioned, like with Rich Ledbetter, and they've gone into different parts of the industry. Like when I spoke to Dave Upchurch, we were talking about starting out on Ace magazine, and then on to the one for the Amiga, and then a couple of mags going working for Lego, making Lego games in the late 90s, and coming back onto magazines for a little bit, and then now is like Curve Digital. And in this like 4-hour chat, we had to do it in 2 parts recording, because we just went on for ages. We covered so much. And I think that's just it, because when you're talking about some of these people, it's a 30-year career. I mean, I've had Jazz Rignall on twice now, and again, like with him, even before hitting that record button, you find yourself just chatting away, because again, he's someone who still works in the industry, and you can talk about.
What's he do now?
He's Christ, I've got this. He's got, I'm sure it's a games website. I'm sorry, it's not coming to me at the top of my head, but he's done so much. He's over in America. He's been in America though since going to Virgin back in about 1994. So he's been in America like 25 years. But he's worked on Game Pro, which used to be a really big magazine, and then obviously the website over there as well. again, I did have all this to hand. I've got it in my notebooks, because that's just it before getting any guest on. It's just like, right, I've made a load of notes about what issues that you worked on and some, key moments. And, then try and bring them up to go, do you remember, giving Sonic 2 60 odd %, and moments like that. Yeah.
Do you remember the controversy with Amiga Power? And they used to give everyone really low scores.
Well, they used a realistic interpretation.
Yes, yeah.
Mediocre, it would get 50%, not like 70 or something.
Yeah. That's something that I will get onto editing the chat with Cam, but that's one of the things he mentions to say. People said we were dead like stingy, but when you think about it, an average game, I suppose, is 50 to 60%, isn't it? Like 5 or 6 out of 10. I think it's a bit different now because obviously we're all adults, but when you look at percentages and when you're a kid, really, you think anything which is like, I'd say 88% upwards, is only games that are worth buying, and then sometimes, like, I used to love scrolling beat 'em ups. So then I'd sometimes get something which got like 70 odd %, which 7 out of 10, if you break it into that, isn't that bad.
If you're a fan of the genre, you can probably add another few % on that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think like Amiga Power, they do get quite a bit of stick, for some of the scores they're given. But then I suppose on the flip side, when they really, really love a game, so like let's say some of Sensible stuff, you knew about it. You really, really did.
Their highest scoring was Sensible World of Soccer, wasn't it? It was a 99% or something.
Which you can't go on. But then they've also done like 1% games done by Stu Cambridge.
Yeah.
He was obviously, it was funny because like when you look at him, you can still see scans of it online. But you look at that last issue of Amiga Power, and one of the reviews, I think it's a rugby game, it got like 1%, and they're just ripping into it. Where it's sadly,
it's literally a load of poo.
It's just joking remark after joking remark. I mean, I think this is one of the questions I asked him, because at the time, towards the end of Amiga Power's life, obviously the PlayStation was like up and running, and it's like, well, did Future Publishing, not mind as much, what you were getting up to? And it's like, well, look, they trust you to put a magazine out and things like that.
Even read now, probably not, right?
Yeah, it's like you can see the page count shrinking. But then, like, one of the most interesting chats that I've had really was with Andy Lowe, and he went from editor of GamesMaster in 1994 over to Sega Power. Now, I got on Andy Lowe, Dean Mortlock, and Ali Binns, or Ali Harper as she was back then, to talk about Andy Lowe's period of Sega Power, because this is when Sega Power had so many different editors, but a lot of people aren't that keen on Andy Lowe's era because it's a bit Mickey taking it a bit weird. He wanted to make it a bit more edgy, a bit more jokey, like Viz and stuff like that. And he shared so many stories, he tried to make it a bit more, modern day culture at the time, talking about, films and music a little bit as well, like with his top 10s that we'd have on a magazine. But then we talked about a time where Pizza Hut tried to ban Sega Power. There was some sort of promotion because they said it was like she's called like, I think it was like Mandy Manners or something off the top of my head, but it's like, a woman who keeps busting out of the bikini, dead jokey, over the top, character. And obviously it was like trying to peddle porn the way they were putting it. Again, you can look this story up quite easily. But I think back then, these writers, and like Andy now, is an author, like these are really, really talented people. And they put their personality and come up with ideas on the page. And remember, this is all before everything's been so horribly policed, because, now it'd be like, was trying to think how best to try and word it really, because there's obviously a lot more scrutiny, with rights issues. If you take something and do a spoof of something like that, of a certain thing, people could come down on you. Whereas, you could just have a bit more fun in a way, and just be a bit more daft with it. I mean, even going back to like Meme Machines as well, things like reading the Mean Yob letter pages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some of his replies, you'd never get away with it now. It'd be like, oh, you fat so-and-so or whatever, or just go crawl in a ditch and die or something. Maybe not quite that extreme, but you're just like, Jesus, you actually writing that,
Didn't they? They purposely wrote really over-the-top letters to get that reaction back because it was beloved, Yeah. Yeah, it was a funny sort of period, and like some of them, I think, I don't know if it was the Meme Machines guys, but there was that Sega sort of website, UK Resistance. I don't know if you guys ever read that site.
No, I didn't. No.
You can look it up. It was like it might have been the guys from, most of them I think were from Sega Saturn magazine. They sort of decided to start their own website called UK Resistance, where they just published articles taking the piss out of Nintendo and Sony, while at the same time saying how amazing like Sega stuff was. And they do like ongoing like series on finding random Sonic related merchandise in like Poundland and stuff, like Sonic the Hedgehog slippers, and like, hey, I found these Sonic the Hedgehog slippers. I'm taking it's still on like archive.org, but I think a lot of those guys that contributed to the website worked on like Meme Machines and Sega Saturn magazine, maybe like Computer and Video Games. And they were kind of, obviously they were kind of at that period where the magazines were dying out really, and people were, going over to like IGN and things like that. It's got a bit more diverse since the sort of 2000s. I think in this sort of decade, we've had a bit more like smaller scale, like Eurogamer and things like that. I don't think I've read an IGN review for years or trusted them as a genuine source of.
No, I don't. I tend not to. The only gaming websites I read now really are like Nintendo Life, and I always have a look on MCV as well. Is it MCV? Yeah, MCV.
MCV,
yeah. Just for things like industry news. But I very rarely read reviews. Because if a game's, I suppose I know what type of games I'm going to like, and there's not many PS4 games that I rush out to buy now. Like I bought. Resi 2 remake and Spider-Man and a few others, when you go, go on, I'll give this a go. But it's not like for example, when it comes out next year, like I'll end up getting the Cyberpunk 2077 because I love Shadowrun on a Super Nintendo, and that's something I know that I'll enjoy to a point. I mean, God knows how many gigs it's going to be. I'm sure I read somewhere it's meant to be like 100 gig or something. So by that point, my old PS4 will probably knacker and blow up. But that goes back to like what we were saying before about size of games. In regards to like today's mags, like I said before, GamesMaster's folded. Games TM also ended because a lot of the companies that put magazines out, have gone under and stuff. And it's not just games magazines, it's just like, paper media in general, it's meant to cost quite a bit of money to launch a magazine as well. And then obviously it's keeping that readership up and obviously getting advertising and stuff like that.
I mean, what is still going? I suppose it's like.
I was going to ask the same thing.
Xbox,
you've got 4 or 5.
Edge, amazingly, which is probably the one.
Retro Gamer
would have gone pretty quick. Retro Gamer, that's
official PlayStation, official Xbox, and I think that's about it.
There's that Minecraft magazine.
Yeah, you got all these.
I'm not going to include that. But so everything's just gone. Like the official ones. I mean, it's surprising that there is no Nintendo magazine. I mean, there are a lot of great. I would say almost professionally made magazines. Like anyone who sees Switch Player, I think it's called. If you look them up on Twitter, I've bought one issue of that a bit back, and that was a small A5 one, which is really nice. Switch Player. There's also Chris Wilkins, who does Fusion magazine. He talks a little bit about modern in there and retro, and you've got quite a few decent writers. They've not done one for quite a while though, sadly, but like Hyperplay RPG fanzine. But again, that's just like a couple of them on it. So I think it comes down to the age-old problem of, spare time.
Yeah.
And then also you've got, oh Christ, what's it called? It's this Commodore 64 one. Freeze 364, done by Vinny, can't pronounce his surname. But again, if you look for 364 again on Twitter, that's a really good one because it's been going now for 25, 26 issues, and he talks a lot about like the homebrew scene as well for C64. Cool. So there are magazines out there. It's just that they're not really there on the newsstand now because I don't think enough copies would sell. No. But for a professionally done one, I'd probably say, well, I know that 364, like I just mentioned again, looks quite smart now. Switch player, really, really impressed. And again, I think that's probably had about 20 issues now. So it's like there needs to be something for Nintendo fans, and I think that's what I really recommend on that one, because it's just strange. Before I round off like 7 Super Nintendo magazines, and now to get like no Nintendo magazines in the high street, it's just bonkers. I mean.
It's kind of amazing that there's still magazines like at all, like especially like Edge, which is very niche. It was when it started, but yeah, I can understand the official like Xbox and the PlayStation, but weirdly I also can't because I don't really have demo discs on them anymore.
I know that's one thing we've not even discussed. Really,
yeah, exactly. It's a whole other show, but yeah.
They were big selling points, But then again, that just shows how gaming's changed because now everything's just download. Before we mentioned queuing up for games. Like when I was at HMV back in mid-noughties and like a new Call of Duty had come out, people still queue up for that. But now you don't need to queue up for it because you wanted to sell some, but you'll just I'll do the download of it on me console. It's just it's changed a lot. Really, really has.
Yeah, it's sad, but well, I guess you know what. Stu, should we start a Sega magazine? All those Mega Drive games ain't going to re-review themselves, mate.
No.
Starting from A.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, literally every single one. All Sega consoles that ever came out.
Oh.
That's flanking through me. Still, Pat did.
There is one. There was one that got launched. I think Sega Visions. I can't remember like which country it was based in now. But again, I don't know which I've gone to. Hello?
Recently, was that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, fairly recently. Just Sega Visions. I'd probably say about a year ago, maybe. I think it's on its second series. They did it into 2 volumes.
There was a US mag, wasn't there, called Sega Visions in like the 90s or the 80s?
Yeah, that rings a bell as well. Yeah, I'm going to have a proper look at it when we get off air later and try and find out. But I know that I've thrown so many titles of you of magazines and that are going magazines and fanzines. But I suppose it's just how the industry's changed a little bit,
It's probably easier now to make a fanzine because the quality of you can get photo paper from Tesco. Printers are cheaper now. You got everyone has got access to Microsoft Word's pretty powerful for desktop publishing.
Yeah.
Stuff,
What do you think about sort of magazines that are coming out but actually not in a print format, so you can read them on your iPad, your tablet, even your phone? And
I think one thing that I didn't mention, which was actually launched fairly recently, a games magazine called Wireframe. Now, that only came out late last year. If you go into WH Smith's, you will see it. And that comes out fortnightly. And that's about £3 for a fortnight. But it covers modern, but a little bit of retro. But then, Stuart, answering your question then, I'm going to be honest, I struggle to read stuff on a tablet, or on my phone. I mean, if you've probably not covered already, I'm a fan of the old,
exactly,
paper magazines and stuff like that. I just think there's a lot more to it. I mean, I've just had Retro Gamer through the post today because I've now subscribed to that, and it's good. It's nice to have something through the letterbox. And I know I buy a lot of magazines anyway, but it's nice to have a new magazine that you're going to see on the shelves, and also with subscriber issues. We tried to have a bit of an exclusive subscriber only cover, and like things like Empire magazine do that as well. And I think that's like a nice little way to try and entice you into going for it. But I've just, I signed up to, perfect example, I signed up to Readly, the magazine type app. It was like 99p for a month or something. I think I probably spent about 10 minutes on it. I was like, I can't do this. It's like I'm almost cheating on paper. Sorry, that sounds ridiculous, but it's just not the same. It's paper magazines all the way, definitely. You know, it's sadly something that has changed quite a lot, but I still think there is a bit of a market there. But the other thing is, they obviously do degrade, you know, and it's getting harder and harder to find some of these magazines. Like we mentioned, like with, for example, Mean Machines PlayStation, they're like gold dust to find. I'm trying to complete my collection of GamesX magazine and Zero, and they're just so hard to find. I need like 11 or 12. I think it's 9 GamesX and about 14 Zero out of a 30 odd issue run.
What's the actual practicalities of how do you store the magazines? Do you have folders for them all, or do you put them all in cling film? I don't know.
No. Folders and boxes. My wife classes it as a fire trap. Fire hazard.
Put them in front of the front door.
Yeah,
right next to the door. That'd be the best place to store them.
I then look like one of those hoarders on Channel 5.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's a case of, here we are, nice house.
Order.
Yeah. But then, like, you know, last year I was in Retro Gamer just showing off a collection because I like getting the first issues where possible and the last issues just so you can see how the magazine ends, because some of them just end so abruptly. Like, I just finally got that last issue of Total, issue 58, which is so hard to find, and it's advertised in issue 59, but when you do a bit of research on it, a letter went out saying, nope, that's it, it's done. Whereas something like Super Play, they were told it's your final issue, wrap it up, you know.
That's really interesting because because I collected I've got the complete set of the official Dreamcast magazine.
Yeah,
I bought it every month when it came out. That wasn't me buying it later. I bought it in real time. I suppose it's just kind of the way you put it. But like the last issue is issue 21, and it doesn't really have very much in it at all about it being the final issue. I think it was quite, and the Dreamcast carried on for like 6 months as a viable system, and the other non-official magazines like Dreamcast magazine that carried on for about another, I want to say probably about a year.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it comes down to, like, obviously it's a publisher's choice as well. I mean, with GamesMaster magazine, when that ended, bearing in mind it had 25, 26 years, something like that. That's just off the top of my head. They were told 2 weeks before it was going to be the last issue, because at the time, I remember tweeting out going, oh my God, this is, another great magazine gone. I know it's had like ups and downs over years, and they didn't really get much space in the magazine to have a proper farewell type thing. You know, we had a little bit of a look back on some early memories and stuff. But I suppose at least we got told, there was still a way to go. Yeah, thanks everyone who bought us, goodbye type thing. I just always find it odd where, I mean, like before when you mentioned Sega Master Force, that entire series of magazines by Europress just went, and it was just like, they just all wiped out, ended, and that's just crazy. You don't. I think a couple of magazines sometimes get picked up by other publishers. So, like Mega Magazine, that was done by Future, and then Maverick Magazines picked that up. Now, when Maverick picked it up, it nosedived quite quickly, and it turned into just basically reprints of old reviews and features and things. And again, this is the type of thing that Mark from Sega Mag is collecting, because he wants to own every single Sega magazine.
Oh
And
wow.
some of those, he only needs like a handful, but some of those like late megas are so hard to find. And this is another reason why I try to get the people on the show to talk about them. But I've had no luck with one of the main guys behind, Maverick magazines. Still keep trying every so often, but maybe one day.
And some of those ones like Sega Master Force and N Force, they often were printed on, slightly cheaper sort of paper, shall we say? So
Yeah.
they're just dying slowly, aren't they? As each year goes by, unless you sort of seal them, as to never they won't touch any air. But yeah.
No, I think that's just it. And like you see how thin they are as well, like I say, with the paper quality as well. As some of these, it's just a few issues, but that's why they're quite sought after, for people, who want full sets, really. But like some of those Games X magazines have got, they're from like 1991, because I remember buying them for the first time, like when I was at primary school.
Yeah.
And this only lasted 48 issues. I don't know like what the numbers were like, on a weekly magazine, but like I spoke to a guy, Nick Clarkson, who's again still in the industry, and he worked on Games X every single issue, all 48 of them. And again, that was through Europress. And he just goes, it was crazy. He goes, I don't know how it sold, but I can't see it being 75p a week, it doing that well. I say 75p, that was right at the death of the magazine, because it started out at 60p a week. Which is basically just pocket money price, although like when I was 11, you could easily afford 60p, it was good,
I used to get GB Action, which is
yes.
Yeah. Well, quid, I think that was super cheap.
Yeah. Well, again, that was Europress, because when Games X ended, it says, oh, something big coming soon. I was like, oh, what's it going to be? And this went on for 3 weeks, and it goes, right, Games X is no more, GB Action's launching. And again, Nick launched GB Action. Now this went on again. Maverick ended up buying that eventually. And again, those last few GB Action, I think it did about 40, possibly 41 issues off the top of my head.
Run, actually, yeah.
Oh god, yeah, because it was covering things like the Game Boy Color as well, to a little bit. But those late issues,
I picked, to be honest.
yeah, you just it lasted a lot longer than I thought it would.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of them are just very, very hard to find. And I think there's a few other people that I speak to collect magazines. I know someone on one of the Facebook groups, Wes Harper, is collecting any magazine with Knights on the cover for Sega Saturn game. Yeah. So that's what he collects. And from all different countries, like I said, Mark's trying to collect every Sega magazine. I'm just more or less done, on collecting. At some point, I was going, oh well, maybe I should collect just all the Super Nintendo magazines. But again, some of them are going to be so hard to find. Things like the Super Control, again, like a Maverick type magazine, where it just suddenly stops.
Yeah, I guess you'll find that. As all the years go by, someone like yourself, you'll become more important as someone that has basically archived all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's something I should do, because some magazines have moved on to make space. Because, like you said, Stuart, it's like they do take up a lot of space. So I've moved some out and just gone, right, well, I can get rid of this because I'd rather have the full collection of Total. Because that started off going, I just want the early issues of Total, and then I thought, well, there's 58 issues, I've got 30 of them now, sod it, let's try and complete it, and that's where it comes from. So then you've got like another 28 issues extra in your room, and then you go, right, well, what am I going to move out? So I got rid of things like the Amiga magazines now, but I've kept some ST ones because I've got good memories of buying those as a kid. So I've got like upstairs the first ever I had to rebuy it, the first ever ST Action magazine that I bought. So that was the first magazine I ever owned with like my own money.
Oh yeah.
So I had to get that again. I was like, this is brilliant. This is like one of my early memories.
Yeah. In those days, when you bought a magazine, it was probably the only one you had for a month. So you would read
Yeah. It was only when I had paper round when I started buying everything. But whenever I got my paper round wages on the Saturday afternoon, it'd be pence. Because like back then you'd get like $4.50 for a week's paper round in the evening, and maybe like a $5 at mornings. So it'd be like, right, got £9.50 minus £2 for this magazine, £2.50 for this one. So there you go, you got £1.36, Paul, and you'd be like, oh, Jesus. But obviously you've had it throughout the week on magazines. But the amount of times you go into school with new GamesMaster, Superplay, things like that, and like you just said before, Stuart, you know, you'd be chatting to your mates going, oh, look what's coming out now. Oh my God, it's Super Street Fighter 2 I used as an example the other day. It said like your favourite 16-bit memories. And when Super Street Fighter 2 came out, everyone was like, wow, new people, fantastic. I can't wait to get this. Because like you say, and I know it's an obvious thing, you didn't have the internet back then. This was the Bible for games news, you know, these magazines.
It was so exciting when you'd see new stuff, especially consoles coming out. It was like, it's a magical time, and like the magazines are an integral part of that. But anyway, wow, I think we've just actually blasted through an hour there. I think we've gone beyond an hour.
Sorry.
That's all right.
That's good. We invite people on with the gift of the gab, so because we've got it as well. So not having anything to talk about. So yeah, no, it's great. We really, really love it. But thank you, Paul, so much for joining us. And so, Paul, where can we grab your podcast?
Okay, so if you go on Twitter, if you just search for @MaximumPowerUp, also on our website as well, it's MaximumPowerUp.com. On there, you're going to get 88 episodes plus a couple of smaller ones. Yeah. So as said, there's up to now 35 magazine related guests. So if you've enjoyed this trip down memory lane chatting about magazines, you're going to get straight from the horse's mouth, as to speak. You know, the people like Jazz Rignall and many others that I've mentioned tonight, sharing their memories, but also, like you guys do, you talk about retro and you talk about modern, which I think is just such a good thing, because then you're not running out of stuff to talk about. But like, say, the most recent episode that's out at the moment is to talk about the original Xbox and memories on that. And then, you know, you got things like the Game Boy Advance one was one of our most popular ones. And yeah, there's all sorts, you know. But yeah, Facebook Maximum Power Up as well. But yeah, like I say, there's 7 of us on the team. Again, YouTube channel with things like gameplay footage and old videos of me just sat there, ironically talking about magazines, holding up old meme machines and stuff, going, I've just got this, what do you reckon? You know, and let's look at what DuckTales got or whatever. But yeah. But no, I've really, really enjoyed it. You know, look, I'm always up for chatting about magazines, as everyone knows, you know.
Yeah. But there's so many aspects to it. I think we need another episode to get you back on to go through this some more. I think we could easily do another hour.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's been good.
We're going to get you again. We'll go through. We'll talk through some more of magazines in the future, because it is a huge part of all of our childhoods. And yeah, please check Paul's podcast out, Maximum Power Up, as you just said. A lot of the stuff, a bit more background you can get on his podcast. He's got a lot of those legendary writers and reviewers and editors on numerous episodes of that podcast. So please Google Maximum Power Up and you can check Paul's show out. Stu, where can you find us?
Our website, consoleshock.net. Our Facebook page, Console Shock. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. And again, if you just search Console Shock and look for the red logo, you'll see us there. And also Twitter as Console Shock.
Surprisingly, yeah.
Surprising. Console Shock UK.
Not that
I had to double check.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. As Paul said, we love magazines. Go and grab one if you've got one buried somewhere. Don't let your parents throw them out as well.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Wrestle them away from your family as soon as you can. Especially if you're in your mid-30s or late 30s. You've got a huge stash of them at your parents still. Rescue them as soon as you can. Right, guys, thanks you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, thank you.
Cheers, thank you.